Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Kathy and I with more political astrology. As the world is changing really fast, I am Louise Edington, the Cosmic Owl and Cyberpunk Priestess to the Stars. And my website is louiseeddington.com, where you can find links to pretty much everything. But I also have a Substack where I podcast and do a weekly digest of transits for the week ahead. Then on my YouTube, Cosmic Owl Astrology, I do week ahead forecasts, new and full moon, and this and others. and I have a series workshop coming up, a series immersion, 2 full days, really in depth, with a lot of kind of integrative work as well as just teaching the heady stuff about series. And there is an early bird price, and I will put the link below, but you can also find the page on my website, louiseeddington.com. I'd love to have you. If you sign up early, you get the payment plan that's quite extended as well. So, and the early bird price. Kathy.
Hi, all. I'm Kathy Biehl. My website is empowermentunlimited.net. I have weekly, moon, and monthly forecasts. They are also at my YouTube channel, which is Professional Aquarian. I have a Patreon, patreon.com/Kathy Biehl, where I have snippy daily forecasts, like 45 to 60 seconds, available from the $1 level up. And there's a monthly Ask Me Almost Anything. And it is truly almost anything. Um, and my radio show, my show for Om Times, I never mentioned this, is Celestial Compass. It's at 5 p.m. Eastern on the first and third Monday of every month. And I'm talking next week about the year of the fire horse with my friend with the same last name, but we're not related, Beverly Biehl, the intuitive interior. And I think that's it. Oh, no, also on Facebook, the Astro Insight Lounge, we discuss astrology on the ground. And yes, it is political. So, and you have to be approved to get in. So there you go.
because
That's
there
what I have
was
for you.
because there was trolls,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
unsurprisingly, and there's
I had
this
trolls,
thing.
so I made it private.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're kind of going to do things a little bit differently this week just because so much is happening. So Kathy's going to go through the news. She's got categories. Then we're going to talk about kind of how some of the aspects might play out, and the progression of the news, I guess, is how we're going to do it, really. It's going to be a bit more kind of integrative and fluid this week anyway. So I'll just mention the big aspects that we'll talk about first, I think, then we'll come back to them. Is that all right, Kathy?
Oh,
Yeah.
sure, go right ahead.
Because I'm not even going to share the charts this week. We keep doing that every week. And Kathy and I both do detailed week ahead forecasts too. So I'm just going to mention that we have some big aspects again this week. February the 1st, February the 1st, we have the Leo full moon at 13 degrees, and we'll talk about that. But also on the same day, dwarf planet Haumea stations retrograde. Now, we don't normally look at Haumea in this, but I think it's important this week because we have this ongoing dance square between Pluto and Haumea that started in 2022 and ends in 2028. And they're heading towards their ninth of 13 exact squares. But this is all connected to the ongoing Pluto Uranus Neptune dance that is also happening. And Haumea has a slightly longer orbit than Pluto. They're pretty much the same size. So really, they probably have pretty much the same influence, really. And they have a similar kind of energy, except Haumea is very much about regeneration and rebirth. She was the Hawaiian goddess, creation goddess, the mother of Pele, and all of those things. So whereas Pluto is kind of more death and rebirth and kind of digs up the shadow, Haumea is just pure rebirthing and regeneration. In the myths, she could actually give birth from any part of her body, and then her self would regenerate. So So I think the fact she's stationing retrograde in all this big changing time is important. So that's happening on the full moon at 4 Scorpio. Okay. So, and then the other aspects are Mercury and Venus still moving through Aquarius, still under the beams of the sun, but both Mercury and Venus will move to aspect Chiron and Eris in Aries, who are moving closer together as well. Fire and air, which is rapid change, right? And Mercury will come back online this week. Will move out of the beams of the sun. So that means the change is going to start happening even quicker with that fire and air coming really online. Then Uranus stations direct on February the 3rd. Again, that's another big shift, but about 5 days either side I usually look at for these slower planets changing direction. So we've got two big planets changing direction. And then Mercury and will move out of the beams of the sun and square Uranus at its station point. So I think that's all I was going to mention, really.
Nope, Venus too.
Oh, and then Venus will move to square Uranus later. But Ceres gets a couple of big aspects too. Jupiter squares Ceres on February the 5th. But then Mercury moves into Pisces February the 6th. And that's going to be another shift in energy. And then Mercury's going to slow down because then we're going to have a retrograde. But anyway. So everything's gradually moving out of Aquarius into Pisces. If you remember, we've talked about this big shift. And Neptune's now in Aries. And in April, there's so much Aries, it's unbelievable. So now everything's at the ending point. All these cycles are ending at the end of the zodiac. It's quite unbelievable, really. So I'm not going to, we'll look at the full moon chart at some point, but I just wanted to give you the precession of everything. Okay.
And what gets us to this point is first Neptune moving into Aries, which happened on the 26th, and that you might have felt maybe starting to get really angry or alive, feeling a sense of being alive strongly. But all of the inner planets, all these planets that have been traveling together, our communication systems, how we use our energy, how we deal with each other, all moving through Aquarius, the sign of the collective, and all crossing Pluto, which intensifies and brings big power issues and more. Mercury also and Venus met this week as well. So here we go. So in the Mars and Pluto meeting, which happened, state action against the people or collective action or endings. Okay, so Mike Johnson sent the House home for a week. Okay, the U.S. exited the Paris Climate Agreement for a third time. We are now the only nation to withdraw, and the European allies are warning that the move hurts our credibility and hurts the climate agreement's credibility and global climate efforts. All right. Then the big news that the big and ongoing event that encapsulate this horrifically is Alex Preddy being tackled by ICE and shot in the back multiple times. And then Kristi Noem lying about what was clearly visible in many, 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 many videos. So Dan Bovino was demoted. That's a Mars Pluto. Tim Walz, who's been dealing with all this, says he's not going to seek elected office again, but that what he has observed from what citizens in his state are doing on the ground shows him there are other ways of being of service. So he's basically signaling, I'm not going into retirement, but I'm not doing this anymore. A judge actually said ICE is not a law unto itself and cited 96 court orders that ICE has ignored. And the tally is that during the month of January, ICE has ignored more court orders than most federal agencies during their entire existence. And the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, gave Walz conditions for ICE leaving Minnesota, which had nothing whatsoever to do with the immigration enforcement that was the initial. And you're going to see a theme, a Plutonian theme here of absolute lies and power games as I go through the news. They really, really came to a head last week. Her three conditions were give access to the voter rolls, repeal sanctuary policies, which the Supreme Court has upheld as valid, and hand over data on inmates and welfare recipients. So they're not doing it.
No.
The top GOP candidate for governor running in Minnesota has withdrawn. He says that ICE has gone too far and is unconstitutional. Also, apparently, this candidate is the attorney for Jonathan Ross, who is the man who pulled the trigger on Renee Good.
Can I
Curious
just
for-
can I
Please,
just
go ahead.
just add to that? He was inspired to do so because he has daughters, and he said he could not have his daughters knowing that he supported what they're doing, and that's shown up in a few places. And I always think of Venus more as young women in many ways. Ceres is kind of more the older women, and here's Venus kind of, under the beams of the sun, kind of working her magic kind of thing under the beams of the sun is how I kind of see it. There's a lot. It's shown up. Martha Stewart.
Also, that's a good one.
She came out and spoke out against what's happening. She normally never does speak out about these things because her daughter pretty much shamed her into doing it, basically.
It was her granddaughter, a 14-year-old.
Oh, granddaughter. Sorry,
a
granddaughter.
14-year-old girl shamed her
Yeah.
into speaking out.
Yeah. I've seen a couple of others, but they're two notable things. So thank you, young women.
Oh, yes. So Senator Rand Paul, a Republican, has called for the heads of ICE, the Border Patrol, and USCIS to testify before the Senate's Homeland Security Committee in an open hearing February 12th, which is right when Saturn is going to be at the very, very last gasp of Pisces. And then there's been a big tussle over the funding in the Senate this week, and the Democrat contingency plus some Republicans were pulling the ICE funding out of it and squabbling here and there. And there was a deal last night, and then Lindsey Graham pulled out of it. And so apparently ICE funding is in place for 2 weeks, and supposedly it's going to be on the table for discussion. But this issue seems to be changing, every couple of hours. So watch that. All right. So Mars, Pluto, guns have entered the conversation. The FBI director, Kash Patel, basically told people, don't bring your guns to a protest. Well, guess what?
The NRA.
The NRA and Libertarian Party are both saying, no, you don't. We want a full investigation. And Trump apparently also blamed the latest murder victim for the fact that he actually had a gun on him, but he hadn't drawn it. So now there are both Dems and GOP lawmakers are pushing for a joint federal state probe as to what went on here. Okay. Now, voting rights. There we go. That's a Mercury Pluto. Here's a good one. Now, you may have heard, I'll give you the backstory. All right. The DOJ in December sued officials in Fulton County, Georgia. Does that sound familiar? Claiming Civil Rights Act violations, and immediately demanding access and possession of all of the 2020 ballots and supportive material. And Georgia filed a motion to dismiss. And the DOJ's response was basically, you can't dismiss a claim like this. So the lawlessness is just there. Anyway, and instead of waiting for a ruling on the dismissal, mysteriously the FBI gets a search warrant, goes to Fulton County, and seizes the 2020 ballots.
Unbelievable.
All right.
That's really concerning, because I think they are going to rig the midterms.
Oh, that's what they're trying to do, no doubt. So now First Amendment rights. Those are also, journalist Don Lemon was arrested last night for being present at an anti-ICE protest in a church. He says he was reporting The administration went to a magistrate trying to get an arrest warrant for him, and the magistrate said no, and they took it up to an appeals court. This is highly unusual, and the appeals court said no. So somehow they got someone to issue a warrant for Don Lemon's arrest. This is a massive First Amendment problem.
Wow. Wow.
Okay. Um, couple more things.
I hadn't heard that one. I'm
That
like,
just happened. There's an uproar in Italy, because the U.S. is sending ICE to the Winter Olympics to accompany Vance and Rubio. Why not the Secret Service? I don't know. Apparently, it's not uncommon for DHS to send, but the Milan mayor is calling ICE a militia that kills, and says that ICE agents are not welcome as part of the U.S. Olympic security. Meanwhile, ICE agents attempted to get into an Ecuadorian embassy, which is Ecuador jurisdiction. And so there's a big kerfuffle going over that.
oh,
Okay, a few more things. The first wrongful death lawsuit, Mars Pluto, has been filed against the U.S. over drug boat strikes. A family of two men from Trinidad who were killed in October 14. They've accused the U.S. of wrongful death and extrajudicial killings. So more to come for that. Here's an interesting Mercury-Venus conjunction. 9 prosecutors from cities around the country have launched a coalition to assist in prosecuting federal law enforcement officers who violate state laws. It's called the Fight Against Federal Overreach, FAFO. And 2 more things, Mars, Pluto, and Mercury, Venus together. Neil Young has given the citizens of Greenland free access to his catalog. And Bruce Springsteen wrote, recorded, and released a song like within 2 days after Alex Preddy's murder, called Streets of Minneapolis.
And Dropkick Murphys have released a protest song, and there's various other bands. Our protest songs are a real thing now, and people are just putting them out in the world for free. So, please support them. So,
Please support them. And then we're going to circle back to what's the driving issue underneath all of this distraction? Well, the DOJ is now 42 days late in producing, guess whose files? Ghislaine Maxwell filed in her own court proceedings a reference to 4 potential co-conspirators and 25 men who allegedly reached secret settlements connected to the abuse and who were never indicted. Put a pin in that one.
She didn't flip him
Mercury, Venus.
publicly, though. She would.
Okay, so you see there are trends here of big collective, big power, big secrets, big money, big illegalities.
There's also Melania's movie, on Netflix, which is highly hilarious. The memes are, because, I saw one that said people would get up and walk out if they were watching this on a plane. I thought was the particularly good one. But it's a money laundering thing, really. She got 28 million for that. She doesn't care if nobody goes to see it.
I thought it was 40.
Netflix paid 40 for it, I think.
She got 28 million.
She got 28 of it. It is more money laundering, really. I don't think she cares if nobody goes to see it. It kind of, every time the ad comes on TV for it, if I've got the TV on, it's everyone wants to know, and I'm like, no, nobody does. Anyway.
That's not what they want to know.
No.
There are things they want to know.
Some of the memes and comments are priceless, and I won't mention them, but they mention call girls and things like that, shall we say, Diary of a Call Girl or something like that.
Well, so all of these things they're all stories in motion, and this week plot twists are coming with both Mercury and Venus meeting up with Uranus. Uranus's direct station is setting the ground rumbling. He's going to be at that degree until the middle of March. But now he's the planet of latest No. Yeah, no, he's not. Everybody has to touch him on their way out the door.
Yeah.
So we're, we've been talking about a congregation of energy in one sign, and then slowly moving to the next, and then slowly
Hmm.
to the moving to the next. So the graduation exercise from
Hmm.
leaving Aquarius is going to be, oh, bam, having a confrontation with Uranus, which sends shock waves out and dislodges things and changes people's opinions and or
And
perspectives.
and Haumea going retrograde isn't shabby either, I have to tell you. But just a bit more on her. She's shaped like an egg, right? Which, rebirth as well. And in Scorpio, that's about all those power games, manipulations, the dirt, Pluto ruled sign in modern rulerships. And more dirt is going to come out time and again. I think we've said we're in this time where all this stuff we're starting to, they're not hiding it anymore basically, but more and
No,
more stuff is being discovered. I still think the names will come out because we still have Mercury, Venus, and Mars under the beams of the sun. They're still offline a bit. So all this stuff is kind of being said and we kind of get in the news. But I think once things come back online, things will start to change. And just about Melania's movie, to refer to the astrology, Neptune really is kind of, the silver screen, and it moved into Aries, and there's all those parts to it as well. And Mercury as well, the voice and the contracts and the money. So
so could you spell the name of the uh
Haumea,
yeah.
Haumea.
So this is pointing up a topic that you'll hear a lot if you keep your eyes open to it, which is that we're in a massive transition moment and a massive rebirth moment, and
Yeah.
where it's really easy to focus on, because it's so in your face, everything that's dying.
Yeah.
But look at the the collective effort that's been going on in Minnesota,
Yeah.
and the way the rapid response teams and the way people on the ground have just mobilized. I do want to mention, I saw a video. Um, is her name? I never remember her name. Her second part of her channel name is permaculture. Is it Parker Primrose Permaculture? Parker Permaculture? I don't know.
Right.
Anyway, there's at any rate, there was video out of Minneapolis with a gigantic ice vehicle. I thought it was a Humvee. I don't know what it is, a Bearcat, something gigantic tank-like vehicle inching its way down the street, and one person standing in front of it.
Oh, that
And
reminds me of
then
China.
Oh, but it gets better. So one person standing in front of it and just walking toward it slowly, slowly. And the driver was putting the brakes on and putting the brakes on. And then gradually you see all these people come into the frame from both sides of the street. And there's this giant phalanx of people just standing, blocking
Wow.
this vehicle from moving. There we have it.
Mm.
That's your inspirational image. We're doing it somehow. I mean, it's happening there. It's happening there. And one other thing I want to address, I'm just going to go off on a little soapbox here. You're going to see a lot of people saying, oh my God, the last time Neptune moved into Aries, within days, within 36 hours, the Civil War started. I'd like to point two things out to calm you down.
Yeah.
The first thing is, when that happened, there wasn't a giant phalanx of planets in
No.
Aquarius all ganged up together in a harmonious relationship with that Neptune, like firing up the people. And secondly, most of the states, I mean, the secession had already happened when the
Mm-hmm.
Civil War started.
Mm-hmm.
We're still, at least in theory, an intact union. So please, please look for the signs of the collective building networks and coming together and working together, and this being part of the
Mm.
new way that we're doing things.
There was so many things different in the astrology of the start of the Civil War. So many things. And I am going to leave Haumea in the chart. So when we do look at the full
Good.
moon chart, I'll show
Well,
her.
do you want to do that?
Yeah, let's have a look. Yeah. And instead of just going through all the aspects, we can kind of point at the process. Okay, this is Haumea. And, I've been following her for quite a bit now. So you can see the spelling, I think, if I click on it, can you?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So she's at her station point right now, and she has been. Their squares started in 2022, with Pluto. They started back in at the end of Capricorn and Libra, and then both of them moved fully into Aquarius and Scorpio. And their last square of 13, which I find is very um, a good number, is on January the 13th, 2028 at 6 Aquarius Scorpio. And that's 6 Aquarius is the south node of the USA.
Very interesting.
So, and she's in Pluto's sign. I don't know if anybody's I don't like the whole traditional rulership thing anyway. It's hierarchical in my mind, but um Pluto is very scorpionic, let's face it, but so is she, because Scorpio is a very fertile sign. The sign of Scorpio is very associated kind of with the reproductive organs area of the body, and that kind of thing. So it's in the area of kind of this deep kind of empowering soul birth, if you like. And Pluto's in the sign of the future and humanitarians, and but it is also the sign. It can be an authoritarian sign, Aquarius. But I think the two are, as well as Pluto's supportive aspects to Uranus and Neptune that are going to be ongoing right throughout this year. All these planets are going to speak to each other. In July, Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune will all be at 4 degrees as well. So, this is all kind of converging to bring out something very new and radically different to what we've done before. So, what Kathy said, try and look for the signs of what's emerging. I always think that's a really good word for Scorpio too, actually,
Yeah.
emerging. What's emerging as a response, which I prefer, a response rather than resistance, because what you resist persists. So, mhm,
I'd like to say something about the glyph for Haumea.
mhm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, Two things jump out at me. One of them is it looks like a person that is carrying a baby or about to drop a baby
Mm-hmm.
with the two
Mm-hmm.
circles. But the other is it reminds me of a temple gate.
Yes, it
It looks like
does.
a Japanese temple gate.
It
So if you
does.
look at this as a gateway moment, that may
Mm.
help.
Mm. Good point about the glyph. Thank you. I might add that because I'm going to edit an article I wrote about this
Please.
square. Um, I'll give you credit because you came up with it,
Thank
but
you.
it does look like a temple gate, and I think that also speaks to a lot of what I've said about the Aquarian energy that we're moving into in so many ways. Signs and ages are different, but Aquarian energy is Aquarian energy. That it's this mix of very futuristic, but bringing in the very ancient as well. And we're seeing a lot of, return to indigenous kind of ways of being and living, and that would speak to like the Japanese culture is an ancient one too. So, mhm.
I
Mm,
have a question.
mm,
I would like to talk about the grand trine
mm.
in fire that is in this
Oh,
chart.
sorry, I should have taken her out.
Oh, no,
That's
no, don't, because there's a reason it's there. So there are these three feminine influences in
mm.
fire dancing around. So that's what, Lilith, Black Moon Lilith, and Eris?
And Selena White Moon Eris. White Moon.
Oh,
That's the White Moon, Selena. She is said to be pure white light coming in. She's kind of the cleansing of the shame of the divine feminine that is represented by Black Moon Lilith. I usually take these out. We were obviously kind of meant to look at these too.
I think
But
so.
yeah, and Eris, table turner, as I've said before, I talked about it quite a lot on my week ahead forecast. even without the white moon. We brought that in for my membership call this week. The divine feminine energies are kind of working together. And it is about women, but it's not just about women. It's about that energy of kindness and reciprocity, all of those things that we see in, say, Governor Waltz as well. He's got that energy. It is women, but it's also about, a lot of people that have brown, black people who have been othered as well. It's that more kind of anything that's not basically, the energy of power over domination, culture, whatever you want to call it. I'm trying to avoid saying white nationalists, but it's represented in them. So, yeah.
Well, when you have a grand trine, that's so there's this round robin of energies going, 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 going. It's
Mm,
always important to see if there is a point in the middle somewhere that is what is bringing all of this down to ground. And the point in the middle, the closest one would be Mercury. Actually, well, yeah, Mercury at 21,
mm.
Aquarius, and Mercury is conjunct. Is that
Cariclo, which is the
Heracles?
wife, the wife of Chiron, and she's. I always describe her as her name literally means grace spinner or spinner of grace. I always envision her sitting there, pulling all the threads together and weaving this new story of what we want to become. So,
And what I find fascinating about that is, or I've got the wife of Chiron, and then up here at the top, Chiron is conjunct Eris, who is the sister of Mars. So we have the feminine expression of energy that is normally focused on from the masculine perspective.
yeah, yeah, hmm
This
yeah.
is all very positive, people, okay?
It
Please.
is. It is very positive, and it's such a big thing because of all these outer planets, all changing signs, and we're not just moving into a new kind of era or age. We're moving into a new great age. You know, uh, all the Kali Yuga things and that we're at the end of the Kali Yuga. We're moving into something entirely different that we've never lived before on this planet. So, but it is looking positive. I've always thought so. A lot of psychic people think so. People who look at the yugas, like the guy I interviewed who wrote the book Yuga Shift, Babu Dev Misra, that's his name. He said we're going on the up, after we deal with this fallout of the end of the Kali Yuga. So, mhm.
The other really important thing, and I'm wondering if there's a way, I'll point it out, and then maybe there's a way to take some of these little guys out to make it
Oh
clearer.
yeah, I will
So
after that. Yeah.
the full moon is at 13 Leo. It's right over there under the 9 o'clock position. And I want everyone to look and see how much is opposite it in Aquarius. So the moon is just all over there, all by its lonesome. And we have this
Mhm.
massive lineup of energy in Aquarius. Pluto, widely in orb. Mars, which is how we use that's the
Mhm.
masculine. It's how we move ourselves forward. Vesta, which is the fires of the state. The sun, Venus, what we value, the people, Mercury, communication, and then Chariclo. All of this is opposing that moon.
Yep.
So
And
I,
again, and once more, as I've mentioned, Venus and Mars. Mercury is just back online. It's more than 10. No, it's not. It's not back online yet. They're all still under the beams of the sun because they're within 10 degrees. Mars, Vesta, Venus, and Mercury are somewhat offline from our perspective, which kind of means I'm always a bit confused. What do you think of combust? I always think they're a bit offline, and when they come back online, we kind of realize what's been happening while they're offline. Does that make sense?
it makes sense. I
Mm.
I always see great clarity at the moment of,
Oh,
or there's
when they
something that gets assimilated at the actual moment of the Kazemi.
oh
Yeah,
that midpoint is a moment of clarity. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, let me take some of these bits out because I've shown you where Haumea is, but I just want to show you that she's square Pluto. and she will be quincunx to Neptune as Neptune moves forward, which is an aspect of adjustment, and in both Mars signs traditionally, and she's also a quincunx to Uranus. But when Uranus goes, no, when Uranus goes into Gemini, she will be. So there'll be a finger of fate pointing at her soon, a
Mhm.
yod this year. So maybe we'll bring her in on and off throughout the year to show you. But she's part of this big shift we're going through. And, we're trying to break it down politically and give you hope and inspiration from what we see, because I think we both see the future as generally bright, right? With some
Yeah,
challenges
and
along the way.
I don't want to, I don't want to undersell how just
Hmm.
in batshit crazy February is going to be. I mean, that's
Oh,
really part of my French, but just so we do have unbelievable things. I mean, listen to how I describe the news. We have a
yeah,
Department of Justice that is telling courts it doesn't have the power to rule.
yeah.
Like, and then we have a paramilitary department that's telling
Mm,
people they don't have constitutional rights, either to the freedom of speech or Second Amendment rights for their guns. So there's some really, really radical. Also, you didn't see what you saw kind of behavior going on.
mm,
Here is I want to point out as Louise is simplifying the chart. Keep your eye on how lonely that moon in Leo is.
mm.
That's highly, highly dramatic. It can be very childlike, can be very attention getting, but Leo is the sign of the leader. And there's all this collective opposition staring down the leader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I have a moon that's the handle of a bucket, as they call it, and it's a lot of weight on a moon, to carry all that stuff on the opposite. So it's a lot of pressure on it. Hmm. So I think I'll take Cariclo out as well, because I think what we're going to look at today, we've looked at some of the, how the extras kind of play into this over and over. So just to simplify the chart, there's the full moon chart with the planets that most people use and the main asteroids. I like to leave those in. That's all right. We can take
So
those out as well if you like.
we can expect incredibly toddler-like
Oh,
attention-getting behavior this weekend and enormous opposition, unified
mm.
opposition to it. Do I
Like
have to be more clear than that?
yeah, and it's with this. Let me take. In fact, I'm just going to take out a couple of these more, just to highlight how these personal planets are so close to the sun. And so that's the people in the sign of the people bringing their personal, putting aside a lot of differences sometimes as well to unify. They don't all agree on everything. Don't get me wrong, So we're seeing that more as well, right? To put aside some of the differences, like the governor withdrawing and saying I can't support this regime, or the candidate for governor, things like that. Um, it is people coming unifying more. We don't very often, in fact, I don't I don't know if there's an astrologer's found a time where all three have been under the beams of the sun for so long.
And this is lighting up the chart of the two people who hold the top two positions in our country
Shall I briefly show how? Very quickly.
very quickly.
Yeah, because we're done with looking at this person's chart, but I'll move him to the inside. His Pluto is at 10 Leo, and his vice president's sun is at the same degree. So this full moon is hitting them. Oh, it's on his series too. If you want to know about how his series plays into this, I did a whole presentation for Kepler College, and it's on their YouTube on series, and I used his chart looking at his series, and this full moon is hitting it. So I'm not even going to talk about it now, except it shows why he's such a horrible person because of how his upbringing affected him.
So very likely Pluto in the 12th, that's hidden power moves.
Hmm.
The 12th house is it's one of the two houses of criminality.
Mm.
The full moon being there, especially opposite Ceres, there could be uh, disclosure revelations of more criminality, of grifting, of money laundering, of things going in a not just power games and uh, primal, infantile emotional reactions. So
Mm.
if something is even more out of control this weekend than what we typically see from this individual, it's an indicator of something behind the scenes. Think of the moment like he's in Saudi Arabia and someone shows him a paper and he just takes it and sticks it in his jacket. He meets Putin in Alaska and his aides are ashen faced after the
Mhm.
meeting. Something may be his behavior this weekend may be a tell of information being disclosed or something coming up. Am I saying this in a way that I feel like I'm dancing around it? But at any rate,
But you
all
know,
of this,
but
yeah,
if you think about the energy of a full moon, it's the lights, it's the luminaries shining a big light on something. So, and he's got that series in Aquarius in the sixth house, and it's just going to show how his um what he's doing is not meeting the needs of the people, right?
no.
I would say that's what it's going to show. Big highlighting, more, we're going to see more people are going to see it as well. So, because it's in the sign of Aquarius, and the moon, of course, is in the sun's sign over there in Leo. So it's like, it's going to be his emotional response, but also the emotional response of the people because of what they're seeing, right?
And I got to tell you, the NRA is not happy.
No,
The Second Amendment people are not happy that they're being told, wait a minute.
I never in my life thought I'd be happy about the NRA's statement. I'm like, oh, see, that one's come back to bite you, saying we've all got the right to bear arms and all that. But in this point, it's working for us. So
I
anyway,
think I think the quote is it's a mixed up, shook up, tumble down world.
yeah, it really is. It's
Like what?
a bit like, liking what Marjorie Taylor Greene's saying and things like that. It's just like, ooh. But you notice as well, his Chiron is at 14 Libra, so it's being aspected as well by this full moon, and it's close to Jupiter. And so that's, his self esteem is going down the toilet, I would say. All his wounds are being exposed, and he's taking it out on the world. But,
Yep, yep, yep,
hmm
yep.
hmm much more I could say about that.
Same here, and we're sick of looking at this chart, so
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah,
just know that the other person is also implicated in this as well. All right,
yeah, and it's his
because his
son.
sun is at 10 degrees.
And
Uh,
way back at the start, early on when we were doing these things, we looked at that sun and we always said Vance's sun on his Pluto was going to be both a challenge, a bit of a challenge for him, actually. So mhm. I
yeah,
think
that's a tractor beam that he cannot escape.
yeah.
So the coming attractions that I'll just drop here is Uranus just about, okay, Uranus stationing direct 2 days after this. So on February 3rd, Uranus rules the solar eclipse that's happening on the 17th of February, the new moon, and
Mhm.
Uranus is starting to move toward its square to that eclipse. So there's something um, dynamic, I guess is one way
Mm.
to put it, that is starting to build noticeably. So, whatever this weekend's dramas are, they're going to feed into something that gets stronger and louder and stronger and louder and explodes mid February.
And it's going to
And
start, it's definitely going to start this week because Uranus is
yeah,
at its station point here. This
hmm
is the exact minute it's going to station direct past
27,
2 days
27.
later, which is lovely. I like that number. Two nines, two endings. Anyway.
I like that number too. 27 is my favorite number.
Yeah. So, it's big changes are coming. It's just like just wild. I'd also kind of love to add one just fun a thing about Leo. Leo is associated with gold, of course, the color gold, and look at what he does with everything gold and things. I kind of think this form people are going to see his greed more, I would say, as well, even more. The people where some of us see it already, but more and more people are just going to see that he is just grabbing all this money, whether it's, his board of peace having to pay and him pocketing the money, or Venezuelan stuff with him pocketing some money, and, Melania pocketing the 28 million or whatever, you know.
The New York Times had an opinion piece last weekend that actually tallied. I think he's made like 1.4 billion in the last year off the US.
Yep.
The New York Times, owned by his major donor, Jeff Bezos,
Yes.
reported this.
And
So,
and and talking of taking our money, or the people's money, or just the US money, or whatever, we're paying for ICE. We're paying for all this stuff. Our taxes are paying for it.
and as I said to one of my senators who is an attorney, um, they're just chalking up a whole bunch of civil rights violation lawsuits that we're going to be responsible for paying. There
Mhm.
and this is just all we're
It's
all going to pay for this so many different ways.
and it's time we said we've had enough of it. More and more people gathering together as they are in Minnesota. Yeah. And I think more and more people will, and I think a lot of, Republicans who voted for him, who perhaps, I think we have to welcome them back because a lot of them are just like in the state I live in, they basically just vote Republican because that's what, Mormon church kind of does. And, they don't really pay much attention to what those politicians are doing, to be quite honest. So I know they're called low information voters, but I just think they're just people who are just trying to live their lives quite often. you know. Not everybody gets involved like we do. So, but I think kind of when they start to see what's happening, which more I see more doing, I think we kind of have to just say, okay, welcome aboard. Mhm.
We can have our private opinions.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, anyway.
yeah.
I now have a different view.
I'm not interested in vengeance on just the ordinary voter. Mhm.
Oh, no, not me neither.
No, no, is basically my point. I don't mind other people. So,
So my little moment of or point of faith to direct everyone to is that Neptune at zero Aries. That's the point of raw creation. That's the
mhm,
point where everything is possible. And so people are coming back to life. They're probably really, really angry. Yes, it's going to get kind of messy, but you're going to have the gumption to address whatever it is you feel called in the moment to address. And this is the type of bravado that causes someone to stand in front of a moving car
mhm,
and then and then a bunch of people on the street going, "Oh, here, I'll join him."
mhm. It's people willing to take risks, to take a stand. It's kind of like the spiritual warrior energy in many ways,
Right.
Neptune in Aries, and it happens to be on my south node. So that kind of explains why I want to write that article I talked to Kathy about before, and I probably will just do it anyway. Even if it brings arrows and barbs, but there you go. But you wait till the sun moves further away from Mars as well, as the week and next week progresses and Mars really comes back online, people will be taking more action. Today is a no buy day, right? We're
Right. Yeah, it's a
you know,
general strike day.
yeah, yeah. So, if you can, please, don't buy anything today, whether it's on Amazon or whatever. Um, if you hadn't heard of it before, like I've got a birthday party this evening and I haven't got the gift, so I might buy, but I'm going to a little shop that's a little independent shop, which
Yep.
I feel better about doing to buy a fun gift for this person. So instead of going to the big box stores. So other than that, no buying. Because I had forgotten to buy the gift before. Anyway, so please, just pay attention. I think I've always said pay attention and see the response to what's happening. I prefer as again to resistance and to people coming together. Just keep witnessing it and supporting it, and perhaps finding those that you can come together with to respond to what's happening too. So.
And I want to thank a lot of people responded to my request in the last video, and then I made several times this week, and gave to food banks or something in their local area, or to situations on the ground in Minnesota. And if you're curious about that, go to standwithminnesota.com. It is a massive directory of all kinds of resources that you can funnel even small amounts of money, because little bits of a money all combined together make something really, really, really big.
Mhm. And I'll actually add that I did put another one. I've got created a Google Doc with various
Oh, that's
links
right.
in.
Yes.
So, that's going to be in the description of this video on YouTube too. So you can go and just find the links in the Google Doc and click on them. I gave to the food bank, but I do a lot for the food bank anyway. I did my 10K on Thanksgiving for the food bank. It's my favorite because people are needing it. And that's another thing that's happening in Minnesota as well. People standing together. They are delivering food to people who are scared to leave their homes, because of what's happening. Brown people, usually. So please help people. Okay.
And notice where your light is going, all right? That Leo full moon is for each of us as well. Notice where you're being appreciated. Notice who makes you feel better about yourself. And I don't mean like in an ego-driven, aggrandizing way, but be very mindful of how you're spending your light. And there comes a point when you're colluding, if you're trying to win over somebody that doesn't get you, or I like to say has a water pistol or a bucket of water and trying to douse your light, go share it with people who could use your light.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't spend time with those that are trying to dim it. We don't have time for that right now.
Nope.
Let them wake up in their own time, whatever. Or not.
Or not,
And do your self-care. As always, find
as
joy,
always.
do joyful things, go to a fun birthday party where I get to meet my friend's new dog.
Yay.
Him and his husband adopted a dog. And so, yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All right, everybody, I'll stop the share, and who knows how we'll do things next week, because things are
Who
changing
knows?
so fast. See you next time.